Everybody who's ever been to summer camp has their fair share of insane stories, whether it's the epic pranks on fellow campers or the mythical creature you swear you saw creeping in the trees. Well, nothing even comes close to the weird and wonderful goings-on at camp that allows a spider monkey, an elephant, and a white rhino to pitch their tents. That's right, we're covering the entire story of Camp Lazlo, one of Cartoon Network's most underrated and creative shows. Camp Lazlo was developed by Rocko's Modern Life creator Joe Murray. The series has a similar animation style and kinda offbeat humor, where every character is a bit of a dunce, which quickly leads to hilarious slapstick and outlandish situations. The series ran for 5 seasons and took home 3 Emmys. There would be no Camp Lazlo without the Jelly Cabin Trio. First off, the Spider Monkey himself, Lazlo. Lazlo's a good-natured but a bit manic. He creates mischief, but ultimately wants to help his fellow campers and marches to the beat of his own drum. He can make the best out of any bad situation, but is sure to bring a tornado of insanity wherever he goes. Fun fact, he's voiced by Carlos Alazraqui, who also played Rocko on Rocko's Modern Life. Another connection between both shows. The other 2 members, Raj and Clam, are Lazlo's best friends. Raj is an elephant from India, reluctantly gets pulled into Lazlo's schemes all the time. He's fearful and much more neurotic than the other campers, but he's also smart, loyal, and supportive. Clam, on the other hand, is a white rhino of very few words. He speaks in short, brief sentences, but has a high intelligence and musical aptitude. The trio's natural opponent is Scoutmaster Lumpus. Lumpus is a bit of an ecomaniac, and when I say a bit, I mean he's completely full of himself. He tries to show up or control the campers, and freaks out when he doesn't get his way. He's accompanied by his banana-slug assistant, Mr. Slinkman, a literally spineless yes-man who is a photographic memory of the Bean Scout handbook. The show has a pretty deep bench of other campers who will meet along as we go. Alright, enough background. Without further ado, here's the story. The first episode, Gone Fishing, opens with a group of campers casting lines into the water, including Edward Platypus in his first appearance. Edward is another antagonist to the Jelly Camp trio. He's a perfect foil to Lazlo. Rude, snobby, and sadistic. He becomes a major source of conflict, but for now, he's just fishing. After being pestered by the other campers, he pulls up the rod to find that he's caught a snow globe. Man, I hate it when that happens. Not everybody's amused by these antics, as Lumpus snidely comments and declares his intentions to make Camp Kidney history by catching the first fish in its lake.
I'm going to pull a fish from this lake!
As Lumpus puts this plan into action, Lazlo rushes out from the bushes, causing him to fall into the water. Luckily, there are no flesh-eating cannibals, just Raj chasing Lazlo. Lumpus tries to resume his fishing quest, but gets distracted by a boat carrying girl camp, Squirrel Scouts, including Patsy Smiles, a mongoose with a serious crush on Lazlo, and Jane Doe, a deer who will become hugely important for Lumpus, but we're gonna get to her later. The trio is swimming with fish, and they jump right into their boat. Lumpus has gotta learn, you gotta catch more flies with honey, or in this case, fish with kindness. Something like that. Lumpus wants to imitate their method by getting a boat, and he heads off to do so ASAP. Lazlo wants to help him, but is immediately dissuaded by the rest of the campers, who reveal Legend of Dead Outlaws, a malicious drain that will suck boats into the depths, and most menacingly, a serpent that specifically targets scouts. But Lazlo is not deterred, and rallies the support of the other campers. Well, some of the campers. Lazlo, Raj, and Clam venture through the woods and stumble on a shiny speedboat. Raj tells the gang that this is Lumpus's boat, but Lazlo and Clam are too busy with their new game, imagining that the boat is a spaceship. They press every button and it takes off at full speed. Meanwhile, Lumpus and Slinkman head out to fish just as Lazlo and his friends pass in their boat. He grabs a canoe and goes after them. Once the boat stops, Lazlo and his friends get stranded in the middle of the lake. They get scared immediately. This sequence has some of the show's trademark inventive animation, as all backgrounds drop out except for the character's eyes.
I think I see fingernails! I'm going blind!
Intruder isn't a scary serpent or a dead outlaw, but even worse, it's Lumpus. All the urban legends turned out to be false, except for the drain, which Raj unplugged in the chaos. Oh wait, it was attached to the speedboat, which is now sinking. Elephants aren't exactly known for their nautical skills or buoyancy. In Lumpus's canoe, the trio tells Lumpus they intend to help him finally reel in a catch, and he really appreciates it.
You really want to help me?
Lazlo, Raj, and Clam take their place in a tube tied to the boat's back, while Lumpus takes the lead and sets out to catch the biggest fish in the lake. He might want to look behind him. As the lake serpent tosses Lumpus around, Lazlo, Raj, and Clam debate if they can best help Lumpus by continuing to not help him as agreed. Eventually, Lumpus gives in.
I do need your help.
At least he caught that fish. The second episode, Racing Slicks, opens with the campers on their way to the annual go-kart race. Their excitement drives Lumpus crazy as usual. He announces a slash in the go-kart budget down to only $5, making their construction nearly impossible. A group of campers led by Edward search for cheap options that aren't on the nose at all until he decides to buy one on his parents' credit card. The Jelly Camp trio approach Slinkman, who's been having some racing fantasies of his own. He gives them $5 Sure, they won't waste it. Who am I kidding? This is Lazlo we're talking about. The trio uses these funds to keep riding in a stationary race car ride instead of building one of their own. Guess it's time to go back to the bank of Slinkman.
We need $50 more.
Now, Lazlo vows the group will buckle down and immediately go back on their word. The other campers are hard at work on their carts, and Lazlo can't help but feel behind. And Slinkman feels lower than ever.
I don't think I've ever seen him look so low.
Edward takes the opportunity to gloat and awards the trio first place in the loser category. After a rousing speech from Lazlo, Clam gets a little excited and knocks his bet into Raj's, who kicks it away. It speeds off, and Lazlo gets an idea. The big race is about to begin. Slinkman checks the racers in and gets to Jelly Cabin's cart, which is Clam's bed. Talk about built for comfort. They put Slinkman in the driver's seat, and he's more than thrilled to take it on. Edward takes an early lead. Slinkman starts late and slowly rides along in dead last. Lazlo unveils a secret weapon, soda. They cruise past the competition of first place and give Edward a special splash in the face. The finish line is in sight when the soda runs out and Edward cruises to win. Regardless, Lazlo is satisfied with Slinkman's performance, and Adam gets a prize truly deserving of his big ego, a very small trophy. Let's jump ahead to episode 4, Parasitic Pal, which leans into some of the show's more gross-out elements. After a swim, Lazlo gets a new look. Even Raj and Clam are terrified of it. They get him to the nurse Leslie, yes, the nurse is a shark, who dismisses him quickly, and Lazlo begins bonding with his new attached friend. He even names it Lamar. The rest of the camp is seriously freaked out by Lazlo's new buddy Wuddy, as explained in this extremely catchy song. After a day of activities, the parasite, named Lamar, begins to disgustingly grow. Raj gently encourages separation from the unruly intruder, while Adam tries brute force. But Lazlo only grows closer to it. By the time the camp is getting ready for the big swim race, Lamar is so big, Lazlo has to carry him in a wheelbarrow. As the life force is drained from Lazlo, he has a seriously trippy dream sequence before realizing Lamar has got to go. Before he can act, the weight of Lamar propels the wheelbarrow down a hill directly into the lake, causing some serious chaos along the way. Panic results in the campers crowding the dock, which collapses, and Lazlo reaches the end of the hill directly into the lake. Lamar leaves Lazlo's face in the water, leaving Lazlo devastated. Episode 7 is an exciting one, and both segments are absolutely essential. The first, Do-Si-Do, gets us our first taste of Lumpus and Jane Doe, but it starts like any other installment, with Lumpus freaking out on the campers. The scouts collectively think he's being more abusive than usual, so Lazlo sets off to see what's up. On his way to Lumpus's office, Lazlo hears Lumpus recount an attempt to seduce the leader of the Squirrel Girls, Jane Doe. He thinks she rejected him when really she was talking to somebody else. But Lumpus handles it really well. Lazlo explains the situation to the other campers and decides to plan a dance to force some romance between Doe and Lumpus. He sends Raj and Clam off to Acorn Flats to invite the Squirrel Girls, but the two jokers are immediately captured by Patsy, Gretchen, and Nina. They reject any notion of attending the dance, although Patsy can't help but get hearts in her eyes when she hears that Lazlo was planning fireworks. Jane Doe, however, is totally down. On the night of the dance, Lazlo ushers in a large crew from both Acorn Flats and Camp Kidney. The only one missing is Lumpus, who has a serious case of nerves. Lazlo gets him dressed up, refreshed, and ready to go, but right when they arrive at the dance, the participants turn on each other. Jane looks for the other chaperone for help and comes face to face with Lumpus, now wearing some seriously pungent cologne. Hopefully it's not deer repellent. When Jane says she was looking for Lumpus, he explodes, literally, into fireworks. Everybody ends up in a happier spot with Lumpus totally smitten, and Patsy comes up to Lazlo to give him one last slug in the arm before heading back to camp. What's a mongoose girl to do with such a wacky crush? The second segment of that same episode, Prodigus Clamus, opens with the trio breaking the rules. On a janky black and white, they watch thrilling footage of trees growing. Lumpus, hidden as a totem pole, hops out and gives them a lecture. He hypocritically takes the TV for himself and tunes in with the help of a Slinkman antenna.
Come on! Here, have some chocolate.
Lumpus tunes in to a famous scout leader who says 1 in every 14 scouts is a genius. So Lumpus sets off to find the one genius of Camp Kidney. That's gonna be a little hard. Lumpus assembles the campers to determine who's a genius by having them complete a giant puzzle, paint a masterpiece, and also play an instrument. It's a disaster on literally every level. Just as Lumpus is ready to give up, he's roused by a beautiful song played by none other than Clam. Clam's music leads to a surreal sequence where music notes take flight and flow throughout the entire camp. The campers' heads even take the place of some notes. Looks like Lumpus has found his genius. Lumpus sets up a meeting with the Scout Talk show, and he begins to lure in Clam. Raj and Lazlo understand they might lose Clam to the big leagues, but they still support him. Clam goes to audition for the big time, but just as he's about to play, he lets out an earth-shattering belch instead, that even moves the moon from orbit. Now that is impressive. Lumpus is dismissed, Clam rejoins the trio, and all is right at Camp Kidney. Episode 10, Camp Kidney Stinks, lives up to its name immediately with the Jelly Camp trio being bombarded by stinkweed before the opening credits are even up. However, they love it and go diving in the smelly flowers immediately. The rest of the campers join the trio except for one, Samson. Samson has appeared in previous episodes, but this is the first episode that delves into his character. He's a guinea pig, so neurotic. He makes Raj look cool as a cucumber. He is extremely nervous and does not have much resolve for, well, anything. His freakouts are pretty funny.
Can't handle stinking, and I really...
Lazlo resolves to help Samson learn to love the grossness so he can be included in the group activities. What could go wrong? They attempt to dirty Samson up in a variety of ways, but he freaks out and cleans up. In the cafeteria, Lazlo tries his next cure, food fight. Samson remains clean, until he's not. Back to the showers. Lazlo finally enlists Chip and Skip, two dung beetles and potentially the stinkiest campers of all time. However, they refer Lazlo to someone even smellier, Cousin Stinkbug. He and Samson hit it off right away.
I don't know. Go to Sunday school, I guess.
The trio's actions drive Samson out of Camp Kidney. Samson finds his own paradise and rides a rinsing rainbow that engulfs him in a soap bubble and gets him fully uncontaminated. This doesn't last for long, as nature's gifts turn out just as dirty as Camp Kidney. To bring Samson back, Lazlo arranges a mass cleaning session. The other campers resist, but once they see Lazlo's squeaky clean glow, they get jealous and finally rinse off. Ironically, Samson finally gives in and walks through the stinkweed and is blessed by Odoriferous, the smell fairy, who gives him a new nose to endure any scent. But at this point, the camp has moved on to the clean trend. When will Samson ever fit in? I do like the nose, though. Episode 11, Slugfest, opens with a day in the life of Slinkman. He pretty much has to do everything in Lumpus's daily routine. Even with a shattered window from Lazlo, Slinkman is in uncharacteristically amazing spirits. The poor slug gets his hopes dashed when Lumpus goes back on his word, denying him a chance to attend Slugfest. He heavily lays on the guilt.
I guess you've made up your mind then.
Finally, Slinkman, of course, doesn't stand up for himself. Lazlo gets word from Slinkman and decides to help him out. Lazlo roleplays the conversation that Slinkman can expect to have with Lumpus to no avail. But hey, it's cheaper than therapy. Nothing works, so the trio stages a home invasion and breaks Slinkman out so he can get to Slugfest. Slinkman denies them yet again. The next morning, Slinkman does his daily routine of assisting Lumpus with his daily duties, and all goes according to plan until he just can't take it anymore. He trashes Lumpus's room, slimes the microphone, and a whole lot of other crazy stuff. In the wreckage, Lumpus finally admits that he likes Slinkman, and the two go to Slugfest together. Aw, don't you just love a happy ending? The Season 1 finale, The Big Cheese, opens on Mail Day. Clam gets rocks, Raj a cheese wheel, and Lazlo a plunger lamp. Okay. Lumpus has Slinkman scope out the goods for himself, and he wants the cheese wheel. He orders it confiscated, but Slinkman refuses to go against the manual, which prohibits male dairy confiscation. Lumpus puts on some sunglasses and tries to act cool to get close to the cheese. He then scoops it up between his butt cheeks and gets out of there. Well, if the cheese wasn't smelly before, definitely is now. Ugh. Wait, no. It was actually a beehive. Ouch. Lumpus keeps hanging out with the trio just to get close to that cheese. He gets wet, shot at by arrows, and swarmed by bugs, but he finally does get at that cheese. In his cabin, Lumpus sets up a cheese bar, and gotta admit, it's pretty snazzy. The trio's distraught at their loss, but Raj assures them that eating the cheese will cause disintegration. While Raj, Clam, and Lumpus, cry at impending doom, Lazlo springs into action. He tries the plunger, but it doesn't work, so Lumpus is forced to confront his mortality. With limited time left, he decides to live it up and eats his favorite forbidden snack, chews out his boss, and does whatever he wants, completely uninhibited. As Lumpus meets his end, he says so long to the camp and rolls over to die, but it turns out the cheese wasn't toxic at all. Lumpus almost looks disappointed. I get it, man. The sweet release of death. That just about wraps up Season 1, but our stay at Camp Kidney is just getting started. Season 2's premiere, Hollow Beanies, starts with the end of the summer. The campers go away as fall rolls in, and Lumpus finally gets time to himself. He really loves Halloween, which he explains in this
I adore Halloween, oh yes I do.
beautiful song. Even without the campers throwing him off base, he's still a bit of an idiot. Deep in the camp, one light flicks on. Is it a ghost? A ghoul? A goblin? Nah, it's Lazlo, Raj, and Clam. Lazlo goes over the essentials of trick-or-treating and warns them that any Halloween non-believer will be tormented by the curse of a Halloween spirit. Meanwhile, Lumpus is getting his relax on. He feasts on confiscated candy from last summer, puts on an oatmeal salad face mask. Weird, but okay. And he kicks back. But something isn't right. The power cuts out, and his cabin suddenly becomes a house of horrors. Oh no. Who's knocking on the door? This is getting kind of scary. The Jelly Trio shows off their costumes. Raj is a mummy, Lazlo is Frankenstein's monster, and Clam is the most frightening thing of all, a traffic cone. Lumpus slams the door in their faces, and they set off to find another house that will give them candy. I hope for his sake that the spirit isn't out looking for a non-believer to torment. In a hilarious montage, the gang continues to knock on the door until he finally gives in. The trio walks into Lumpus's cabin to see a whole bunch of treats, but Lumpus is planning a trick. They swim in their candy but get terrified by the curse of the Halloween spirit, who turns out to be Lumpus, who is locked out and freezing. He finally busts in, unaware the gang is hiding in his bear, and he thinks that they're the spirit. He has kind of an Ebenezer Scrooge moment and he breaks down until... And that's why you don't eat too much candy, kids. Episode 3, Parents' Day, starts with an ending as the campers' parents drive away. Lumpus reveals he hasn't seen his parents for 17 years. Maybe that's why he's so miserable. Lazlo feels bad immediately and decides to make him feel better by spending the whole day with him, disguised as his parents. He's sure to appreciate it. It's not long before Raj and Lazlo show up as Lumpus's mom and dad with the help of Chip and Skip's trench coat and shoulders. Where's Clam?
Dog! Woof!
Ooh, that's gotta hurt. Lumpus buys their impersonations and catches them up on his life. They bicker, but get it together, and head out to make up for lost time with their son. Lumpus's parents play catch, take family photos, and play games until he's all tucked in. Aww. The next morning, Lumpus is overcome by emotion at a note from his mom and dad. Good thing he's not being lied to, right? Lumpus is a changed moose. He broadcasts to the entire camp that he loves Slinkman and all the other campers. Lumpus hosts a I Love Camp Kidney Day full of activities. It's fun, yet also overbearing, and eventually, Raj suggests the old Lumpus might have been better. Lazlo finds himself in a dunk tank, and before Lumpus can throw the ball, they get into a love-off until the truth is revealed.
Raj, Clam, and I dressed up as your parents and spent the day with you.
Lumpus breaks the dunk tank, and the camp's natural order is restored. You would almost feel bad for Lumpus if it wasn't so funny to watch. Season 2, Episode 4, Lovesick, is another Clam-centric episode. It begins with the annual Onion Day tug-of-war, with Camp Kidney on one end and the Squirrel Scouts on the other. The trio is super inefficient with the rope, much to the dismay of Adam.
Instead of playing macrame, why don't you guys pull for a change?
It's just Clam versus Gretchen. Clam goes flying and bumps his head really bad. They take him to the nurse and receive a startling diagnosis. Clam is sick. With love. Under a microscope, his crush on Gretchen is revealed. Lazlo sets off to cure Clam. He immediately turns to alternative methods and ties ducks to his and Raj's heads and chants as Clam suffers in quarantine. Note to self, if I ever have an operation coming up, do not book me with Dr. Raj and Lazlo. Next, Raj proposes water from his home country, Kafizzle River. They crack open his snow globe to harvest some, and it's incredibly potent.
Wow, it's like magma from the Earth's core.
They give a cup to Clam, and yikes. They finally decide to try Lazlo's grandma's remedy, a Brazilian plantain persimmon pie. Sounds delicious. Meanwhile, Clam goes to visit Gretchen at her cabin, and she's really not into it. They end up bound together, literally, when their bandanas get tangled. Gretchen scrambles to untie the knot just as Patsy and Nina come to the door. She stalls with Clam hidden out of sight, but he sneezes and leaps into view. And the squirrel girl's totally freak. Patsy then puts her camp in lockdown. Lazlo and Raj hear the alarm and rush to the rescue. Gretchen and Clam end up where they started, in a tug-of-war this time with their neckerchiefs. They collide, and Clam snaps out of it, but now Gretchen's totally smitten. Lazlo pies her in the face, and she reverts to normal. Wow, what a ride. Episode 6, The Battle of Pimpleback Mountain, gets started with a history lesson. Lumpus tells the story of his great-grandfather defending a tent called Old Ironside during what looks like the Civil War. In the present, Lumpus wants to pitch the tent again for its 100th anniversary. One problem, the winning cabin to assist is none other than the Jelly Camp Trio. The trio wheels Lumpus and Old Ironside up to the mountain to the side of the battlefield. Lumpus, of course, bosses them around and makes them do all the work. He drifts off to sleep and down the mountain. Back at the top, Old Ironside comes to life, and it's snazzy. Inside, the trio finds all kinds of fun artifacts, but a spider on Raj causes him to completely stampede through the tent, destroying it. With limited time until Lumpus returns, Lazlo plans to distract him from seeing the tent. Lumpus claws his way to the top, and Lazlo comes up with multiple plans to sidetrack him. They trick him through modeling sessions, misleading signs that take him straight to an avalanche zone, and eventually into reenacting the Battle of Pimpleback Mountain itself. He actually gets really into it.
Enemy spies!
Lumpus, lost in the reenactment, spends hours looking for the spies from the story. But Lazlo realizes he has to come clean. Lumpus walks inside to see the destruction, but he blames the enemy from his reenactment instead. I think Lumpus might be a method actor or just really dumb. Slinkman snaps him out of it with a hit to his head with a frying pan. Getting smacked in the head seems to cure everything at Camp Kidney. Anyway, Slinkman reveals Lumpus's great-grandfather wasn't a hero, but instead was so oppressive that his own men mutinied. I guess being a jerk runs in the family. Ugh. Do you feel a chill? It's because Season 2, Episode 9, Snow Bears, finally shows us winter for the Camp Kidney campers. But we start on another sunny day as both Camp Kidney and the Squirrel Girls are en route to Mount Whitehead. Lumpus is yet again completely smitten by the presence of Jane Doe. They reach the mountaintop, and all the characters debut their winter variants, including Clam, who's dressed in some sort of Christmas Carol-style formal wear. They all hit the slopes, but for safety, the beginners have to ride the bunny slope for chairlift access, including Lazlo and Lumpus. He's mad, but quickly adjusts when he sees Jane's admiration for chaperoning Lazlo and promises him a ride on the chairlift later. Lazlo and Lumpus make for the bunny slope, and Lazlo quickly shows him up. Lumpus, who is in an 80s tubatacular ski uniform, tries to flex, and it goes just as well as you'd expect.
Pizza French fry!
Eager that the bunny slope is very over, Lumpus heads to the chairlift to spend some quality time with Jane Doe, but she gets upset by his treatment of Lazlo and heads off on her own. Lumpus and Lazlo end up at a chairlift together, but it stops midway up. They've been gone so long that Jane recruits the rest of the field trip to search. As you can imagine, they're all pretty inept. Great job, guys. Lumpus gets so fed up with Lazlo that he decides to jump and immediately turns back around, but ultimately causes the entire cart to fall. They cruise back down the mountain, collecting a few campers along the way. At the bottom of the hill, Jane Doe is very impressed, but it's another missed opportunity as Lumpus is frozen to his seat. Better luck next winter, bud. Alright, next episode, Mascot Madness. When the rest of the camp chooses to sleep instead of going wild with Lazlo, he sets off to restore camp spirit. Edward is not having it. Lazlo goes to discuss with Lumpus and notices photos of camp mascots from years past. Lazlo, of course, wants to take this on, but when Edward busts in and says that he wants to, Lumpus assigns Lazlo to judge a mandatory mascot competition. The campers have some seriously strange auditions, with Chip and Skip hilariously impersonating Lumpus through a small finger puppet that is almost too small to see. Edwards is weirdly aggressive and completely over the top. You can say he blows the crowd away.
Why isn't anybody cheering?
Although Raj and Clam are clearly the audience favorite. After the auditions, Edward concedes and invites the trio to a congratulations party in the secluded off-limits marshmallow shack. It's a trap. Edward immediately says he'll report to them to Lumpus unless they let him be the mascot. The trio gives in, and Edward takes over as the Duke of Lice. We are live at Madison Squirrel Garden, where the Squirrel Scouts mascot will compete with Edward as the Duke. Edward can't stop soaking up the applause when the Squirrel Scouts mascot, Miss Mucus, cuts it short. Turns out this isn't a friendly competition, but a full-on gladiator battle. She absolutely pummels him. In the audience, Lazlo makes a pro and con sheet as Edward gets whooped. He convinces the trio to do something in the name of Camp Spirit. The trio jump into the arena and assist Edward, but Chip and Skip deal the winning blow.
Nice cannon!
Edward, tied up to a tether pole, credits himself, but at least he helped bring back camp morale. Season 2's finale, Hello Summer, Goodbye Camp, is the first half-hour episode. And it is very strange. Kicks off at the start of the summer, and the campers are in high spirits singing a song that defines the heart of the show.
Proud to be the second best camp.
When they arrive, Camp Kidney is gone. Slinkman confronts a Repo Man Bulldog who claims the camp had been handed down too many times, and Slinkman himself gets repoed next. The Bulldog doesn't even spare the totem pole, much to the dismay of Lazlo. Camp Kidney is unfortunately doomed to become a parking lot. Next, Jane arrives in a cool little acorn car and is horrified, and brings Camp Kidney to Acorn Flats for a while. Jane explains to Patsy that Lazlo will be sent to another camp, and she takes it really well.
Lazlo!
The displaced members of Camp Kidney reminisce, except for Edward, who hates everything. A distraught Lazlo goes alone to the dock, but when he wishes there were a way to save Camp Kidney, a giant bean rises from the water. Yeah, you heard me right. A giant bean floats into the sky. He tells Lazlo the only way to save Camp Kidney is to go into the woods to find the worldwide bean jamboree, which will reveal the location to the true savior, the Rock of Hope. Okay. The next morning, Lazlo thinks it might have been a dream, but still tells the other campers. They all want to help, but Edward flaps his beak and shuts them down, so the trio set off alone. There's some beautiful, idyllic animation of their journey, and all seems to be going pretty well at first. Sorry, Raj. During their journey down Dead Miner's mine shaft, which sounds totally safe, Clam plunges from a ledge, but is saved last minute by Patsy. She joins the trio on their journey. Raj starts to lose faith, just as Patsy points out the sign of the rock. Instead of a grand, wish-fulfilling rock, they find a gravel pile. But the bean jamboree is in the distance, and they run to the gate. They're stonewalled by a very rude and very French snail, but he's eventually persuaded to let them in. The inside is more of a fortress, where the world's finest bean scouts engage in numerous advanced activities, and the group are led to the Big Bean. Meanwhile, back at camp, Edward obsesses about the possibility of being sent to a math camp. He falls into a dream where Lazlo appears to him at the dock and says he knows how to save Camp Kidney. Edward wakes and tells the others. At long last, the Big Bean. It wheezes behind glass, and Raj thinks that he's suffocating, so they break it, and he's not that big at all. Little Bean reveals Big Bean is actually Clyde, his cousin. Turns out, he started the Bean Scouts and shut Camp Kidney down for being a dirty hand-me-down camp. He's not gonna save it. Is this the end of Camp Kidney? The gang is devastated.
We came all this way.
It's honestly really sad. Raj dries his eyes on Lazlo's neckerchief and reads a poem written on it. Raj isn't impressed, but it reduces the Bean to tears. Turns out that the neckerchief was originally owned by the Bean, and it was him who wrote the poem. Lazlo gives it back to the Bean. After all, it's what any good Bean Scout would do. Edward gathers everybody at a gate at Camp Kidney based on instructions from his dream, and the scouts witness Lazlo, Raj, Clam, and Patsy truck the camp's buildings back in. The Bean restores Camp Kidney and doles out the honors. Another summer ends, but Camp Lazlo keeps getting better. Season 3 starts off with another 30-minute episode, 7 Deadly Sandwiches. Lumpus and Slinkman ride across the lake to see Jane Doe. At Acorn Flats, Jane hosts a fan club meeting for dear actor Rod Buckskin. Lumpus and Slinkman sit in on this meeting and decide to accompany Jane and the fan club, composed of just one other member, to the student play that night. But Lumpus lies to impress Jane and says he's going to play the lead. Lazlo directs the other campers at a rehearsal, and let's just say they won't be winning an Oscar anytime soon.
Greetings, famous traveler. Please eat me.
Raj, who plays the lead, acts like a complete diva and gets so frustrated by the other actors and script changes that he storms off. Lumpus shows up wanting to take over the leading role, but Lazlo casts him as a new character that was recently added to the script. Lazlo encourages Raj to improv as Lumpus unknowingly yanks Dave around and the rehearsal devolves into chaos. The campers arrive at the play, including Jane Doe. Lumpus immediately shows off, but quickly gets rushed backstage for his costume. The play begins, and Lumpus gets brought out for his big part. I guess you could say he rocks? Sorry. Couldn't resist. Raj comes on stage for his big monologue, but immediately freezes up. But Lazlo coaches him on the lines off stage, and he gets going. Lumpus, however, gets super annoyed that he's not the center of attention. The rest of the play goes off great. Even though Lumpus is an immobile rock, Jane still notices him. From the play's plot, Lumpus realizes the sandwich Jane Doe is about to eat is poison. Using supermost strength, he lifts the rock, jumps off the stage, and hilariously craters into the ground. Jane thinks it was all part of the act and had a great time. Even if she is a little dazed, Lazlo sure knows how to put on a show. Episode 4. Where's Clam? Lazlo leads the crew to collect firewood with the golden rule: everybody must carry their own share. On the way back to camp, Raj immediately starts complaining and gives his pile to Clam, piece by piece, till he's not carrying any, and Clam is completely covered. Raj stops for a water break, turns back around, but can't find Clam. Raj gets back. Lazlo asks about Clam, but Raj leads Lazlo on a goose chase to buy time. So, where is Clam?
Raj? Oh!
Oh, there he is. Clam builds an insane bike, tree hybrid, and goes searching for Raj. Eventually, Raj makes the crazy excuse of all. Clam is invisible. What's more crazy is that Lazlo actually buys it.
Amazing!
Edward sees Lazlo playing with invisible Clam and tells him Raj has to be lying. Raj can't bring himself to come clean and leaves a letter saying that he'll exile himself into the woods. As if that's easier than being honest to your friend. Good luck, dude. In the wilderness, Raj hears a banging sound and is terrified, but it turns out to be Clam's contraption. The duo are reunited at last, with Raj promising to carry his fair share of firewood, but no need to walk. They get back to camp in style. They come back to find Lazlo drank the ink that Raj used on his letter, which turned out to be invisible ink, which actually made him invisible. Might want to put a cap on that. After another eventful day, all is back to normal, except for the fact that the entire camp is invisible. The next episode, Squirrel Seats, is a nice detour that flexes the show's humor. We start with another field trip, this time to Old Geezer Geyser. Lazlo tries to read up on geyser facts when Patsy suggests the unthinkable. She wants to sit next to Lazlo on the way back. Everybody is totally chill about it.
Lazlo is sitting next to me.
They reach Geyser, and it's more of a hole in the ground. Raj does his best to dissuade Lazlo from sitting next to Patsy, but he won't hear it. Edward has a problem with the seating arrangement too, and makes a plan to rush on the bus straight after the geyser eruption, and blocks the girls from sitting down, but at the last second, Raj plugs the geyser with his butt. This can only last so long, however, and it eventually blows him right out. Neither Raj nor Edward's plan works to delay the seating, so Raj literally pushes Lazlo out of the way and sits next to Patsy instead. All the musical chairs with seating leave Edward seatless and scrambling for a spot. He ends up right next to Gretchen, who kinda grosses him out. Good thing alligators don't eat platypus, right? Episode 7, Space Mates. It's another fun detour with Chip, Skip, and Nina, 3 characters who really get the spotlight. It starts with the Squirrel Girls hosting a seance where Patsy uses it to ask the spirits who her soulmate is. The Ouija board spells out Lazlo, which shouldn't come as a surprise to literally anybody. Nina is devastated when she pulls not one, but 2 of camp's most disgusting campers, Chip and Skip. She still gives them a shot and leaves a love letter with instructions to meet her that night. They can't tell that it's an invite. In fact, they actually think it's anything but. Chip and Skip follow their noses to Nina's meeting point, and she has a candle-lit dinner set up. Chip and Skip are hopeless. They don't even know how to use chairs, so Nina gets them cleaned up. Wow, these guys can really pull off a suit, but their conversation skills leave a lot to be desired. Nina is polite but secretly devastated until it's not so secret. She freaks out and says the universe was broken due to its prediction of such an elevated lady being with literal dung beetles. Harsh. Chip and Skip vow to change the universe for Nina. From her cabin, Nina sees Chip and Skip building a rocket ship so they can fix her universe. She's thrilled and impressed by their skill and work ethic, even though the ship is clearly made out of dung, and gets right on board. The ship works a little too well and flies out of control and crashes with Nina on board. The good news is that Chip and Skip learned a valuable lesson. Actually, no, they did not. They can't learn anything. Let's jump to episode 9, Tusk World. Lazlo starts another morning, optimistic as usual, but Raj is super upset because one of his baby tusks is loose. He explains the legend of the Tusk Wizard, who's just like the Tooth Fairy. Raj is convinced the wizard won't visit because he's not at home, so he decides to keep the tusk from falling out all summer. Raj tries his best to eat soft foods no matter what. Wow, well, that lasted long. Next morning, he finds out that the Tusk Wizard didn't visit, but Lazlo convinces Raj that he just needs an extra night. The next day, still nothing, so Raj packs his bags to go back to India, but Lazlo stalls him for another night. Lazlo plans to put the quarter under Raj's pillow to trick him into thinking the Tusk Wizard did come, but Raj wakes up during this trick, and they all play together with Lazlo and Clam pretending to be the Tusk Wizard and Tusk Brush, with Raj none the wiser. The only problem is that Raj has so much fun the night before, he wants another visit from the Tusk Wizard as soon as possible. Pleading to the nurse doesn't work, so Raj recruits Edward to pull his tusk out. That's insane. The plan works, and the next night, Lazlo and Clam return in their disguises. The next day, Raj is devastated, as now he has no more tusks for a future wizard visit. He decides to steal the tusks from a fellow camper. He chooses Harold, a walrus, but just as he's about to saw Harold's tusk off, Lazlo and Clam emerge from the lake and come clean. Raj is very grateful for the love of his friends and offers to give him back their $1, but Lazlo only gave him 50 cents. That's when they turn around to see the real Tusk Wizard flying away. Well, I guess anything can happen at Camp Kidney. Literally anything. We're at the finale Season 3, Scoop of the Century. We're going to learn more about 2 often overlooked campers, Dave and Ping Pong. These 2 loons run the camp newspaper, The Weekly Bean. They notice no one has been taking their papers off the shelves, except for Lazlo. He volunteers to help them get the paper out to more campers. Lazlo brainstorms a name until he strikes gold and says his catchphrase.
The bean?
Now that the rebrand is taken care of, Dave, Ping Pong, and Lazlo set off to do some reporting. Dave and Ping Pong find the scoop of the century, and the papers fly off the shelves. Lumpus isn't impressed, but according to Camp Kidney Code, as Scoutmaster, he is prohibited from reading it. His insecurity gets the best of him, and he sets out to grab a copy, but is stonewalled by the campers. Lumpus comes back in disguise, but the campers are still skeptical, so they test him with the final challenge, saving a pool float. And it does not go as planned. Lazlo eventually realizes that preventing anybody from reading the paper is against journalistic ethics, and gives the new camper, who just washed up, a copy. Lumpus reveals himself and finally reads the big scoop. Samson built a giant toothbrush out of toothpicks. Some real hard-hidden journalism right there. The TV movie premiere of Season 4 is an hour-long Emmy-winning origin story called Where's Lazlo? It earns its epic runtime and sheds lots of light on the beginning of each character's relationship. Starts with Raj and Clam crying in their beds, but where's Lazlo? Nobody knows. Flashback to Raj and Clam arriving at camp for the first time. They're greeted by Edward, who is running the entire camp and wastes no time in bullying the two newbies. Lumpus comes out like a prison warden. This is a very different Camp Kidney than what we're familiar with. In that moment, a banana car comes flying in and flattens Lumpus. What or who could be in its cargo? Of course, it's Lazlo. Lumpus tries to lay down the law immediately, especially telling Lazlo that he's banned from going into nature. Raj, Clam, and Lazlo go to their cabin for the first time, but Raj isn't into Lazlo's decorations and carefree attitude at first. But Lazlo suggests camp activities instead, and the friends get to it. While other campers, led by Edward, have fun by collecting sticks, the trio rolls down the hill running on a log. Slinkman is not impressed, and Edward starts scheming. Back at their cabin, Lazlo hears an animal in trouble and goes out to find a bear with a pine cone in its nose. Lazlo plucks it out, but the bear gets attached and wants to follow Lazlo back to camp. Meanwhile, at Lumpus's office, Edward rats Lazlo out for going to nature. The devious duo confronts Lazlo at his cabin to find the bear hidden inside. It is absolute chaos. Lazlo quickly calms the bear down, but the entire camp ends up hiding under Slinkman's bed. The bear turns when Lazlo tells him he has to leave and chases him out of the camp. Back under the bed, Edward goes to get waffles from the mess hall for the rest of the under-bed dwellers. Slinkman gets Lumpus out of bed to do a head count on the campers, as some have gone missing. Lumpus, of course, doesn't care at all. Samson runs in saying Lazlo got eaten by a bear and has a piece of his destroyed uniform. Lumpus, uncharacteristically, is really upset and dreads a spot on his record. Edward lies to the campers and says Lazlo got eaten and he scared off the bear. Lumpus tries to delay his report to Commander Hoo-Ha, but meanwhile, Raj listens to his brooding vinyls like a total hipster while Clam throws waffles. Guess everybody has their own way of dealing with things. They reminisce on Lazlo when Clam points out the bear was brown, not black, contradicting Edward's story. They decide to set out into the woods to find their new friend. The next morning, Raj and Clam fake their presence in the roll call with wooden cutouts that fall down immediately. Deep in the woods, the duo go on a wild minecart ride, which looks like a lot of fun, I gotta say. Raj and Clam find themselves in a diner. Beef lumberjacks, and their waiter is none other than Lazlo? But they're totally oblivious. They eventually realize and get the full story from their pal. One problem, he doesn't want to go back to Camp Kidney. Raj gives a rousing speech, yet Lazlo stays behind. Raj and Clam head back to the camp to an insane scene. The bear is back, and raging harder than ever. Edward's about to be eaten when, yep, you guessed it.
Ooh, fluffy.
Lazlo saves the day. Back in the present, the duo is still crying about Lazlo's absence. Moments later, he comes in and reveals he was only out for water. This is definitely one of the most lore-heavy episodes with real character development. I love it. Now, the first regular episode of Season 4, Strange Trout from Outer Space, boldly goes where no campers have gone before. Well, except Chip and Skip that one time. Space. This episode was actually part of a special event series, Cartoon Network Invaded, where multiple shows, including Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, Ed, Edd and Eddy, My Gym Partner's a Monkey, and Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, deal with alien attacks. Nah, man, if only Jartoon had done recaps on all those other shows. We start with Samson going for a swim when he's suddenly abducted.
Hey, come on, gravity!
On the ship, Samson meets creepy, crawly squid-like aliens. Samson assumes they want to eat him, but really all they want is cheese. Wonder if they're more into feta or parm. Okay, maybe I'm focusing on the wrong thing here. They snap Samson's swimsuit until he can tell them where they can find some. Samson gets thrown out of the ship and back to Camp Kidney, where Lazlo introduces him to 3 new trout campers from Canada. But wait, those are aliens in disguise. Samson tries to warn the others, but is quickly dismissed. The aliens, as trout, hide in the mess hall and start a cheese heist, but Samson, with the help of a few background characters, intercepts them. Well, at least they tried. The fish take off with the cheese, and Samson celebrates and goes to high-five his new friend, who shapeshifts back into an alien. The second segment in this episode, Cheese Orbs, shows the aliens trying to invade Acorn Flats, but are foiled by Patsy because she ate all the cheese. They take off into another cartoon's universe next, but you gotta watch our Billy and Mandy recap for that. Episode 4, Ed's Benedict, as everybody's least favorite platypus takes center stage. The campers watch for birds to no avail, although the fictional birds Lazlo mentions make for some cool animation. Raj finally sees a unique bird, Edward. Now, Edward does not like this categorization at all. He's a platypus. He even condescends the 2 actual birds, Dave and Ping Pong. The next morning, Edward wakes up to a horrifying realization.
You did sleep funny.
That's right. He laid an egg. He decides to bring it to the nurse and makes Chip and Skip swear to keep it a secret. The nurse pulls out an old biology video. The video explains that although platypus are mammals, they lay eggs like a bird. Edward is totally freaked out. At least no one else knows. Oh, great.
Laid an egg?
The entire camp knows, and they find it hilarious. He heads back to the nurse's office to retrieve the egg, searches for a spot to dump it, and tumbles into a seriously weird part of the forest. On this excursion, he notices a mother bird cradling a baby, and actually brings a tear to mean old Edward's eye. He transports the egg back to his cabin and tucks it into bed. Edward, no longer in shame, parades the egg around in a harness like a new mom-to-be. But when he sees the rest of the camp eating eggs, he puts his baby in the one safe spot, a nest. It hatches, somehow, into a bird. Turns out Dave and Ping Pong planted it in Edward's bed to teach him a lesson. The episode ends with the campers having to learn the facts of life from the nurse's tapes. Imagine a health class with 20 different species. That's gonna take a long time. I hope they get toilet breaks. Season 4, Episode 5, Harold and Raj will take you on a magic carpet ride. Where are we exactly? Oh, in a fantasy. Should have figured. Back in reality, it turns out Raj was telling a campfire story. Up next is Harold, but he doesn't have much to say.
I like bananas!
Let's pretend like we didn't hear that. On the walk back with two other background characters, Harold resolves to be cool like the other main characters, in a gloriously meta moment. Harold lays out a trail of marshmallows to lure Raj into friendship. Raj puts Harold up to some gross tasks like cleaning his retainers, but when Raj asks Harold what he wants to do, the walrus has no idea. Raj finds that Harold has no personality at all, so Raj decides to stop hanging out with him. Wow. Raj, that's just mean. Harold comes back to camp, a broken, walrus. He goes around camp insulting various campers. Raj takes pity and tries to coach Harold on how to be his own person. And Harold reveals his true goal.
Unexpectedly!
Harold busts into the mess hall in his getup as Captain Banana Pants and his sidekick Raj as Sticky Boy. I don't think these guys will be joining the Justice League anytime soon. The not-so-dynamic duo goes out to save people. They remove every nail in Lumpus's cabin to make it unstable so they have somebody to save. But Harold runs into the cabin's door as Lumpus slams it shut, and the entire building just collapses. Edward laughs at Harold, which is the last straw. So he goes to fight Edward, and we cut back to the campfire. It was all a story. At least Harold's a pretty good storyteller. Next up, Episode 6, Lumpus versus the Volcano, has the Scoutmaster back in prime idiot form. He longingly watches an old-timey chicken pot pie ad and rushes to the supermarket to buy one. Unfortunately, at Camp Kidney, today's the day each camper has to sacrifice their favorite foods to Mount Blackhead, a giant volcano. Lumpus tries to cheat the system by throwing a broccoli and Brussels sprout sandwich instead. Back at his cabin, Lumpus sits down to eat, but the volcano begins to shake all of camp. Lazlo deduces this is because somebody didn't sacrifice their favorite food. Lumpus is obviously the culprit. Yet he tries to trick the volcano again when...
Your sorry is but a passing wind.
That's right, Mount Blackhead can talk. He makes Lumpus perform on a unicycle in his underwear. That's something we did not need to see. Ultimately, Mount Blackhead demands Lumpus return with his favorite food, and Lumpus doesn't take it well. Slinkman decides to team up with the trio to get the pot pie to throw in themselves. Lumpus fights for all of his life until Clam bops him on the head with a frying pan. Lumpus falls into a totally wild dream that flexes some of the show's wacky animation.
Howdy-do!
At the top of Mount Blackhead, the gang finally throws the pot pie in, and like Gollum chasing after the One Ring, Lumpus throws himself into the lava after it. That has got his thing. Episode 9, Samson's mail fraud gives the spotlight back to everybody's favorite neurotic guinea pig. He holds up the mailroom, doing magic in private. Every camper receives letters except one, Samson, whom Edward rudely ridicules. Samson sets out to prove them wrong and look cool by faking a letter from a famous magician, Presto the Amazing. The next morning, Lazlo impressed that Samson knows Presto. Samson takes things even further by planting a letter from Presto in Edward's mailbox that proves that Presto is his friend.
Presto the Amazing sent me a letter!
Samson's fortune changes when he learns that Presto is coming to Camp Kidney. That night, Samson tries to meet Presto at the stage door to perform a trick for him. He's met by Presto's rabbit, Mr. Bun, who chomps on his carrot like a cigar and tells him to get lost. Samson's devastated and cries by the door until Mr. Bun gives in. The rabbit confides in Samson that Presto has been giving him opportunities and decides to team up with Samson for a show of their own. Bun goes on stage as Presto and completely flops. Edward confronts Samson and accuses him of what everybody else has been thinking. Doesn't even know Presto. Just then, a limo pulls up. Samson can't believe it. How did Presto know him? We see Lazlo is the limo's driver, orchestrating the entire meeting. Tricking a friend to make them feel better is classic Lazlo. The finale, Season 4, Clown Camp, delves into Lazlo's ultimate fear. Hint, it's red-haired, covered in face paint, works in the circus. That's right, the bearded clowns. And this episode starts with one being shot out of a cannon. The campers watch a performance with Lumpus, absolutely loving it, and the slapstick here is seriously insane. Meanwhile, back at Jelly Cabin, Lazlo is hiding in a trunk. He pops out and admits to Raj and Clam about his fear. Lazlo explains the origin of his phobia. At age 4, a clown nose popped off in front of him and onto his lap. Pretty creepy, but also really freaking funny. Raj swears to protect Lazlo. He seeks out the clowns, but Slinkman tells him they return to Slapstick Mountain. Lazlo's relieved. It isn't long before Lumpus announces every day will be Clown Day. Lazlo gets the heck out of there as the campers transform into clowns one by one. Lazlo gets called to Lumpus's cabin to get clownified, but it backfires spectacularly.
Not on me, you little twerp!
Clown Lumpus chases Lazlo all over camp and into the woods until he hilariously steps on a rake. Lumpus ends up on Slapstick Mountain and encounters the clowns, who have ridiculous Italian accents. Lazlo sees this from behind a tree and goes back to camp to rally his friends to save Lumpus. Back on Slapstick Mountain, Lumpus is actually thriving, but when their act knocks his red nose off, the clowns turn. Lazlo decides to face his fear and disguise himself as a clown to save him. Just as Lumpus has given up, Lazlo uses the clown's instincts against them and rolls out a matchbox car, which they can't help but squeeze inside. This episode is one of the best character representations of Lazlo. Even when facing his biggest fear, he still puts others first, all told with non-stop physical gags. Too bad it's over. But the good news is, we've got one last season to cover. Season 5 starts off with an Edward-centric episode, The List. Lazlo is frolicking through the forest as one does when Edward steps out from a tree and trips him. He gets sent to Lumpus's office to get disciplined, but Lumpus is thrilled. Slinkman takes over and says Edward has to do something nice for Lazlo. Lazlo, laid up at the hospital, tells Edward to do his daily list, so Edward has to walk a mile in Lazlo's shoes, and leads to all kinds of awkward situations. Edward comes home after a long day of painfully helping others to find all the other campers waiting inside to surprise him. They thank Edward for his good deeds, and it soon turns into a huge party. But back at the hospital, Lazlo is manipulated into feeling insecure by a face drawn on his cast that turns evil. Yeah, really. Edward, on the other hand, is still acting like Lazlo, but the campers start to find it overbearing. He follows Little Bear off a cliff to the hospital, where Lazlo's having a party, which is more like a pity party. To get the campers' attention again, Edward sets out to hurt himself. He ties a bowling ball to the tether ball pole. Man, this stinks of desperation. Edward returns to the hospital even more beaten up than Lazlo and immediately sways the campers' attention, but Lazlo gets jealous and sets out to hurt himself even more. They go back and forth with nail beds, paper cuts, cat's claws, and more until the entire camp is injured. It's this kind of insane physical comedy that the show does really well. Episode 2, The Engagement, continues a long-running character arc, Lumpus's crush on Jane Doe. Season 5 has some huge developments on this front, but I'm not going to spoil anything. It opens with inviting Lumpus over and he's about to pop the big question, but that's when she shares some heartbreaking news. She's engaged to Mayor Pothole McPucker. He's disgusting and his reveal is just hilarious.
Just telling him the good news!
Lumpus cries a river, literally. He sets out to break off the engagement by manipulating the Jelly Camp trio into helping, knowing full well their antics will drive the couple apart. There's a brilliant montage of Clam, Raj, and Lazlo annoying the betrothed couple on dates. By the time Clam does a De Niro in Cape Fear at the movies, he drives Jane Doe away. The last straw is when they deface the statue of Jane, thinking they're doing a funny prank because of Lumpus. Lazlo comes clean, and Jane instantly knows it's Lumpus and uninvites him to her engagement party. That night at the party, Jane tells campers to watch the door to make sure Lumpus doesn't come. No one knows he's already there, in disguise, especially Samson, who tries to flirt with him. But the encouragement Lumpus needs to stand up and say how he feels to Jane Doe comes unexpectedly from Samson. Lumpus, in a disguise so good that nobody recognizes him, finally tells Jane his feelings in front of the whole party. But Mayor Pothole thinks the speech was about him, and he has mutual feelings. He drives Lumpus away, but Jane quickly flirts with a wealthy turtle. Lumpus misses his chance at romance yet again. Will he ever find love? Episode 3 is a half-hour supersized Christmas special, Camp Kringle. It begins with another field trip to Mount Whitehead when the bus suddenly skids off the road. Slinkman finds the culprit. Christmas lights on the street. The campers play in the snow, and Skip hits Chip so hard he falls down the mountain and into a tree. When he wakes up, he's in a new world. That's right. All the campers are now in Christmas Town. Lumpus and the campers go to an elf's home who shoos them off until the door is opened by the big man himself, Santa. Even in Santa's workshop, Edward denies his existence, but the other campers are enamored. With it being July, Santa's about to take his first vacation in 300 years, when a meteorite comes from the sky and destroys his toys. Lazlo offers to help by giving Santa 6 months of vacation activities in 1 week, so he doesn't have to miss out. Santa agrees to come back to Camp Kidney. The only one not excited is Lumpus, who wants to stay at the luxurious workshop. Santa lets him hold down the fort while the big man goes to camp. He's a hard time in most basic camp activities, leading to some hilarious moments, including a wholesome game of volleyball.
That's better!
They even go to the lake, where Santa is chased by the same serpent that appears in the first episode of the entire series. Santa decides to go back to the North Pole, but then he finds a new love, tetherball. He whoops the entire camp. Now he has too much fun and doesn't want to make any toys. The campers, fearing Christmas is canceled forever, decide to find a way to bring him back by making him hate Camp Kidney with help from the ultimate hater, Edward. They try to off-put Mr. Claus with a horrible lunch, but it doesn't work at all. A devastated Lazlo comes to terms with a post-Christmas world when Santa walks over and magically turns the rock he's playing with into a tether ball. This act of service makes him realize he needs to get back to the North Pole as soon as possible. He flies away on the tether pole, but is back in a flash when he sees that the North Pole has been rebranded as Lumpus Land. Lumpus and Santa duel in single combat in a sequence that's honestly kind of epic. Lumpus has the upper hand when Santa points up and a meteor flattens Lumpus. The episode wraps up with a Rack and Bass claymation-inspired meteorite snowman wishing Santa off as Santa goes to deliver presents. Wait a minute, I thought it was July. Episode 5, Samson Needs a Hug kicks off with Lazlo DJing the radio for Camp Kidney, and he gets an upset caller. Samson. Lazlo asks the distraught caller his name, to which he panics and says Edward. DJ Lazlo advises the caller that he needs a hug, and decides to hug the loneliness out of Edward. This is gonna be great.
I pledge to hug the loneliness out of Edward myself.
Lazlo appears as Edward's towel in the shower, under a rock, basically everywhere Edward looks, until the platypus gives in. Edward says he feels better, and Lazlo goes to hug every camper in sight, but they are just not into it. Lazlo runs out of hugs just as he reaches Samson. Poor guy. Slinkman brings Lazlo to his office and says hugging when people don't want to isn't okay. So Lazlo, oblivious that who Slinkman is talking about is him, sets out to find the serial hugger. Lazlo, in a Sherlock Holmes getup, interrogates the lunchroom to find the hugger. He makes them all hug a stuffed elephant that determines the number of hugs somebody is given per day. While everyone else comes up as 0, ruling them out as the serial hugger, he doesn't realize he's the only one setting it off.
Give it a little more.
Lazlo, good-hearted but oblivious, still has no idea by the end. Episode 7 of Season 5, Wedding Bell Blues, is the second to last episode in the series, and it has a major canon event that pays off in a wacky way. Jane Doe is on the altar getting married to the elderly Turtle Manford, but the objections from his ex-wives make her call it off. Lumpus proposes to Jane in an actually beautiful musical number. Unbelievably, Jane says yes. One problem is that Raj accidentally inhaled the ring. They plan their wedding with Jane's finger still up Raj's nose. Raj suggests extravagant plans, while Lumpus has a more scaled-back vision in mind. Regardless, Jane is more to Raj's ideas. She gets pulled in both directions, literally. On the big day, the bride appears, and she's still inside of Raj. Slinkman and the campers can't stop laughing. Lumpus crawls inside Raj's trunk too, and they get married inside, with Raj looking like the blushing bride. So Lumpus finally gets the girl in the end, just not in the way that he thought. Which brings us to the series finale, Lumpus' Last Stand. It starts with Lumpus avoiding laundry day to lounge outside his cabin instead. Slinkman insists camp needs it, and Lumpus reluctantly goes along. But when Slinkman finds only one sock for Lumpus, Lumpus goes into the woods to run away from laundry forever. Last minute, he spills ink, which is the exact same color as his sock, on the sockless foot. Lumpus debuts his painted ankles, with no one all the wiser, except Lazlo apparently.
They're gorgeous.
Actually, he has no idea. To defeat his archenemy, laundry, Lumpus makes every camper paint their uniforms on, and we see our favorite characters in some seriously snazzy outfits. Word gets out about Lumpus' new clothing, and the elimination of laundry gets him an honor from the mayor. And one of the campers saved so much time, he invented time travel. From his device, 2 creatures from the future say that because of not having to do laundry, humans solved world hunger, and Lumpus is a hero. As Lumpus gives a speech, however, something really bad happens.
Worship thee of the universe.
Yeah, the campers are left completely nude with no clothes in sight except a giant dirty pile from the future. Just when the situation can't get any crazier, a police car rolls up and a creature pops out who says Lumpus locked him away all summer, and that he is the imposter scoutmaster of Camp Kidney. What a wild twist. Also, the scoutmaster looks awfully like Heifer from Rocco's Modern Life. Maybe these shows are set in the same universe. Lumpus gets put in a straitjacket and hauled away. The last moment of the series is Lazlo inexplicably celebrating his great summer. Even in the most uncertain times, he is sure to still make the best of it. That wraps up the story of Camp Lazlo. And I gotta say, best summer ever. What's your favorite moment from the show? Let me know in the comments below, and take care, everybody. Bye.